Harris County Appraisal District, Harris County Tax Office, NRCDC Houston, City of Houston, TSU Earl Carl Institute. And what we're doing is we're giving back to the Houston community, and that's why we call it the month of service. But what we're giving back is information, free information. And we just want to let you guys know that you're not alone through, first of all, through this coronavirus concerns, outbreak, and then it could be any other type of disasters, but it also could be just with normal day concerns. We're here for you, and we just want to let you know you're not by yourself. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed this meeting. Thanks.
Okay, so later on in the end, we're going to hold questions until the end for Amir to answer for you guys, but please feel free to type any questions that you may have in the chat box, and we will be reading those aloud in the end. Or also you have the option of raising your hand, and we will unmute your microphone and allow you to ask the question aloud. So without further ado, I'd like to go ahead and have Mr. Amir with Lonestar Legal Aid to go ahead with the presentation. So, Amir?
Thank you so much, Nia, and thank you so much, Myra. I appreciate y'all having me on today and inviting me to share this valuable information with all the attendees. Thanks to everyone for attending today. So we're here to talk about COVID-19 and My Mortgage. What do you need to know? Now, I know that there may be some people who are also listening into the call rather than on the Zoom meeting where they can see me and see the slides. I want to let you know that all the information that we're going to discuss today is on Lonestar Legal Aid's website. That's www.lonestarlegal.org. I'm going to repeat that at the end of the presentation. And if you do go to Lonestar Legal Aid's website, you will see that you have the ability to subscribe to our website just by entering your email address. I want to encourage everyone to do that because as legal things change, and there are a lot of changes happening right now due to coronavirus and COVID-19, Lonestar Legal Aid is regularly updating its website and its blog to share information like what we're going to be discussing today. So today's presentation is going to be divided into 4 big questions. First, how can this information help me or someone that I know? Second, why should I listen or follow this guidance? Third, who is affected by these new changes to the law? And fourth, what about the CARES Act, and that's what we're going to be talking about today, will you learn about today? But before we get to the meat of the presentation, I want to do a brief introduction to what Lonestar Legal Aid is, so you know more about who I am and what Lonestar Legal Aid is and what we do. So Lonestar Legal Aid is a large regional law firm with over 350 employees. That includes attorneys, paralegals, secretaries, receptionists. We're scattered throughout greater East Texas. Our headquarters are right here in Houston, but we have offices in Galveston, Conroe, Clute down near Freeport, in Richmond out in Fort Bend County, all the way out to Beaumont, way up in Texarkana in the northeastern part of the state, and anywhere in between, Bryan, College Station, Waco, Nacogdoches, Paris, Texas, Tyler. So if you live in the greater Houston area and you think this information benefits you, and you have friends or family who may live in the eastern part of the state, please feel free to direct them to Lonestar Legal Aid. We are still working. We have continued working throughout the coronavirus crisis. As you can tell, we're working remotely for everyone's safety. Now, if you do not live, you or someone you know does not live within that East Texas area that I just described, all of Texas is served by legal aid. There are 3 legal aids in the state of Texas. I work with Lonestar Legal Aid. Whereas if you know someone who lives in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or the Panhandle, as you can see on the map on the slides, that area of the state is served by a legal aid organization called Legal Aid of Northwest Texas. If you live in El Paso, San Antonio, Austin, all the way down to the Rio Grande Valley, that area of the state is served by Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. We all do the same stuff, and I'm going to talk about more about what Lonestar Legal Aid and legal aid in general does. But the long and short of it is there's 254 counties in Texas. Every single one of them is served by legal aid to help people. So what does legal aid do? So I've put some bullet points here on the slides, but for those of you who are listening in by phone, I'm just going to read these bullet points out so you have a general idea of what legal aid does and Lonestar Legal Aid does in particular. So we provide legal services for home ownership protection. That's why we're here today. We're going to talk about how to protect your home for potential of foreclosure and how the benefits under the new CARES Act can help you. We also help people with landlord-tenant disputes. So if you're a tenant renting property, we can help you with any legal issue under the sun that relates to that issue. We help people with consumer law issues. And that's really a term that not a lot of people understand. But if you think about you as a person, when you buy goods and services, you buy a car, you rent an apartment, you pay for a warranty, you buy something with a contract at Conn's or Best Buy or what have you, there's a certain expectation that you will not be ripped off. If you are, that becomes a consumer legal issue, and that is one thing that Lonestar Legal Aid helps with. We also help with discrimination, employment, civil rights discrimination, education issues. We have a big focus on helping parents make sure their kids are getting all of the educational benefits that they're supposed to be getting. We help people gain access to health care, whether that be Medicare, Medicaid, or county programs. We help people with getting access to food stamps or SNAP, Supplemental Assistance Program, Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, getting access to Social Security benefits, and other government benefits. We can help people with family law issues, such as if you're maybe going through a divorce or you're a survivor of domestic violence, or if you have child custody issues. Those are things that legal aid can help with, as well as employment law issues. So that ranges to a big topic right now, which is unemployment. There may be a lot of people out there who've never had to navigate the unemployment system here in Texas, and Lonestar Legal Aid or legal aid throughout the state can help with those problems. We also help with neighborhood problems. That's a broad category, but I want to give some specific examples in the Houston area. Maybe you've heard in the news about, neighborhoods where concrete plants are being built, and then suddenly the concrete plants aren't getting built. Lonestar Legal Aid was working with some of those neighborhoods to prevent those things so that people can have safe neighborhoods with clean air. We also help people who are living in areas that are gentrifying, where the property values are shooting up because everyone wants to live there now. Those are just two examples of a wide variety of the neighborhood problems that we can help people with. And finally, Lonestar Legal Aid helps people with wills and estates. A lot of people think about this traditionally as my last will and testament, the document you leave. That's a set of instructions for your family members or your friends to dispose of your stuff. But this can also include powers of attorney, living wills, which are generally referred to as directives to physicians on what you want done to you if you're on life support. So this is a pretty broad overview of what legal aid and Lonestar Legal Aid in particular can help people with. So as a legal aid program, we help families with civil legal problems. So those bullet points that I just went through, think of those as civil legal problems. That's different from criminal legal problems. Criminal legal problems are generally where people are facing jail time or fine, like a speeding ticket. We cannot help you with that. However, Lonestar Legal Aid does help people with getting criminal records expunged, so getting an expunction or non-disclosures. Those are something that people that you could think of as an employment law issue. But if you're really thinking about civil legal issues, I want you to think about four things. Any legal issue related to your home, any legal issue related to your car, any legal issue related to your money, or any legal issue related to your family. Car, money, home, family. If you remember nothing from that previous slide, you remember those four things, any legal issue under the sun that can relate to that, legal aid more than likely helps. And our legal services range the gamut. Some people might just need to talk to a lawyer and get some advice. We do that. Some people might need some paperwork prepared. We do that. Some people might need a lawyer to be more involved, represent them in court, either to file a lawsuit or to defend them in a lawsuit. We do that as well. And Lonestar Legal Aid and all legal aid throughout the state of Texas represents people for free. So there's a qualification process. I'm not going to take you through the qualification process, but I will say if you contact our firm, it takes about 20 minutes. We can do it over the phone. We also have an online process where we check your eligibility to get our free services. This will require us to ask some information about your income. It's not very invasive, and I want to let everyone know that any information, including financial information, is kept completely confidential by our law firm. All right, now let's get to the big show, COVID-19 and my mortgage. What do I need to know? So we're going to be talking about the CARES Act. The CARES Act is a law, and I can't remember the acronym. It's like Coronavirus Assistance and Recovery something Act. But it was passed at the end of March to help U.S. citizens dealing with the economic fallout from the CARES Act. So the CARES Act is what pushed out those $1,200 checks, but it also did so much more. So as part of that, it affects people with federally backed mortgages. And to find out who's here and who may or may not be affected by this, I have a poll. So I'm going to start the poll now. And if you could, I'm just going to give everyone 30 seconds to enter their answers to the poll. Okay, it's been 30 seconds, so I'm sharing the results with you. I see someone took the bait and answered number C, or answered C. Sorry to say that this is a virtual presentation. There's no free food and drinks, but thanks for playing. But as you can see, everyone, I believe, who's answered either has a mortgage or knows someone who has a mortgage. So those are the people who are affected by the CARES Act. Okay, so I'm going to move on and to the next slide. So why should I keep listening? I have a mortgage. I know someone who has a mortgage, but why should I keep listening? We're going through, to use a phrase that's been used way too often, very uncertain times. The United States has not faced something like this in a long, long time. I know I personally haven't faced anything like this in my life. And you might be in a situation where you've lost a job, or you're worried about the future financially for your family, and you might need to know what your rights are to help you pay your mortgage. Because for a lot of us, and I know this is true for me, your mortgage is the biggest one line item in your budget. If you're looking at anything, the mortgage is the biggest one. So as of last Thursday, over 30 million Americans had filed for unemployment benefits. And this was totally due to shutting down, the economy, coronavirus making us afraid to go out, and the economic after effects of COVID-19. Many of these same people are going to be struggling to afford their mortgage because suddenly a job that you had or the income that you had has changed. And so we're here to talk about, in this fluid environment, what does the CARES Act benefit you? How does the CARES Act benefit you? And what rights and options do you have if you need it? Because this is a law that's providing you more rights, more options, but not forcing you to do anything. So let's get to that third question. Who's affected by the changes to mortgage law in the CARES Act? Anyone with a federally backed mortgage. And I'm going to define what a federally backed mortgage is for you on the next slide. And I want to emphasize for the people listening that these definitions are on Lonestar Legal Aid's website. We posted them last week on May the 7th. So a federally backed mortgage is a mortgage that is either issued, purchased, or insured by one of the following government agencies. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, y'all may have been familiar with that. They made the news a lot after the 2008 financial crisis. The United States Department of Veterans Affairs, or the VA, they issue VA loans. The Federal Housing Administration, or FHA, you might hear things referred to, mortgages referred to as FHA loans, or, and a lot of people may be surprised by this, a loan or mortgage from the United States Department of Agriculture, or USDA. There's actually two types of USDA mortgages used to purchase people's homes. Now, I want to emphasize that you may have a loan that's federally backed and not even know it, because many times people get a mortgage with one company, but then then that mortgage is sold and changes hands between many different companies. In fact, most of the time you might even make your payments or receive statements from Wells Fargo or Select Portfolio Servicing or a Chase or Bank of America or someone similar. This is completely legal. This is completely legal. It's a little bit confusing, but the middleman, the person that's sending you the mortgage statements, the person to whom you are making your payments, is the mortgage servicer. The mortgage servicer is an important term to remember, and how they interact with you is important to remember, because it's going to affect a lot of what you do under the CARES Act. So you might have a loan where you're making all your payments like I do to Wells Fargo, but Fannie Mae owns my loan. They sent me a letter a month after I got my mortgage saying, we bought your loan, even though I never filled out any paperwork with Fannie Mae. It's just the way the mortgage system works. So how do I find out if my mortgage is federally backed? Now I understand there are rights for people with federally backed mortgages. How do I figure out if I'm one of those people? So we're going to go through each one of those entities, Fannie Mae, FHA, USDA, and VA, to show you how you can figure it out. And again, this information is on Lonestar Legal Aid's website. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans, they both have websites. Fannie Mae, there's a website, and the link is listed on the slides. Freddie Mac has a website where you can punch in your information that's requested, and they will look up for you to see if you have a Fannie Mae or a Freddie Mac loan. How do you find out if you have an FHA insured loan? You can call the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, HUD, at 1-877-622-8525 and ask the representative if you have an FHA insured mortgage. They're going to probably ask you some questions. It's good to have your mortgage statement with you so you can ask those questions. A mortgage statement would be what you get in the mail every month, or maybe get in your email every month. If you don't want to call HUD, you can call your mortgage servicer, the company that's sending you your monthly mortgage statements. I will warn you though, I have heard reports from my clients and clients of my colleagues that a lot of people are calling their loan servicers, and so wait times can be quite long. It may be best to call at the beginning of the day or the end of the day. A lot of these mortgage servicers have their phone lines open from 7 in the morning till 7 at night. But I'm going to talk about some other options you can use to either go online or send a letter to avoid having to be on the phone forever. If I have a USDA or VA loan, you're going to want to look at your loan documents. So you would have gotten a copy of your loan documents whenever you first closed on your loan, or whenever you filled out all the paperwork, signed everything, and said, I agree to pay this debt, and now I own the home. Generally, this is called closing on the loan. Sometimes if you've owned your house for a long period of time, you closed 15, 20 years ago. Most loans are for 30 years. You may not have the paperwork, and we'll talk about options you can do to get a copy of that paperwork if you don't have it. But if you do, look at the front page of your loan document. This is the mortgage, where it says how much you're paying, what your interest rate is. For USDA and VA loans, it's always on the first page. If you have questions or you don't have the paperwork, you can always call your loan servicer and ask, do I have a USDA loan? Do I have a VA loan? Is my loan federally backed? And here's the catch-all. If you don't want to call, or you try calling and you're told it's an 8, 10, 12-hour wait, you can actually send your mortgage servicer a letter. You can send them what's called a request for information. I'm going to refer to that as an RFI. In the letter, you can ask the servicer who owns your mortgage. You can also ask if your mortgage was purchased, insured, or issued by a federal agency. Now, with RFIs, they have to be sent to a special address that is designated by the mortgage servicer to accept RFI letters. Now, this isn't meant to be a gotcha. You can find that address on your mortgage statement. Generally, it's referred to as the request for information address or the customer service / information request address, or sometimes they use an older term, which is called a qualified written request address. Now, if you don't keep your mortgage statements or you get them online, you can also go to your mortgage servicer's website and find out their RFI address. Now, I just told you that you can write this letter. Now here's a link to a template of what this letter should look like. And this template is put out by the federal agency called the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, or CFPB. This link is on my slides, but again, it's also available on Lonestar Legal Aid's website on the May 7th post about the CARES Act. And this letter is exactly what you need. It's called "How Can I Tell Who Owns My Mortgage?" Like, that information is already in the letter. There's not a whole lot that you'd need to add. So we've talked about how to find out if you have a federally backed mortgage. But what if you do all of these options, you run through everything, and you find out that you don't have a federally backed mortgage? What options are available to you? We'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. Don't worry, I've got you covered. So what about the CARES Act will you learn today? Well, you've already learned one thing. You've learned that people with federally backed mortgages are getting the protections from the federal government. But the CARES Act actually does two things for people with mortgages that are federally backed. So the first of those two things is, back in March, when the law was passed, the CARES Act imposed a suspension, or some people may have heard it referred to as a moratorium, on all foreclosures. That required all federally backed loans, which is about 60 to 70% of the mortgage market in America, to not be able to be foreclosed upon until May 17th. Now, that deadline's important because if you were in foreclosure before, and then they pressed pause in March, May 17th is this coming Sunday. And so starting May 18th, next Monday, the process can start again. So it's very important that if you're in a situation like that, you reach out to get some help. And we'll talk about who you can reach out to get help under the CARES Act at the end of the presentation. So what exactly does the CARES Act do for me? Now I know that I have a federally backed mortgage, and I may or may not want to ask for help. Maybe I need it now. Maybe I think I'll need it in the future. Well, the CARES Act allows anyone with a federally backed mortgage to request what's called a Forbearance Agreement, and I'll explain what that is. And that agreement can last up to 180 days, which is about 6 months. If you need it, you can ask for an additional 180 days, which is another 6 months. So the CARES Act allows you to put off making your mortgage payments under a forbearance agreement for almost a full year, if you need it, if you've lost your job, if you don't know when you're going to get another one, and you don't want to lose your home. The only thing you have to do to request this benefit is either call your mortgage servicer or contact it, either online or through a request for information, and let them know that you have been financially affected by the coronavirus or COVID-19. That's it. There's not a form you need to fill out. There's not an affidavit or a sworn statement that you need to submit. You put it in writing, or you tell them over the phone that you've been financially affected. They have to take you at your word per the CARES Act. Now, what I've done on this next couple of slides, and I'm sorry for those of you on the phone, you can't see this, is shown just the big three mortgage services: Wells Fargo, Bank of America, and Chase. They all have websites where you can submit this information. So you might remember earlier in the call, earlier in the presentation, I mentioned that wait times on the phone are very long. So if you have been financially affected by the CARES Act, but you don't want to wait a long time on the phone, and you don't want to wait to send them a letter, you can go online. And Wells Fargo, I found this website just by Google searching Wells Fargo, COVID-19, and mortgage, those three terms. You'll find the website in either the first or second search result. And the second page that I have up here is answers to frequently asked questions about how Wells Fargo is helping people. Now, I'm telling you, they're required to follow the CARES Act if you have a federally backed mortgage. But they have other information if you don't have a federally backed mortgage and what options are available to you. Now I provided the link here, but it's kind of long. I want to encourage you that if you're interested in looking at this frequently asked questions page, just Google search Wells Fargo COVID-19 and mortgage and you'll find it. Now this slide is the Bank of America page where you can see that they say they're here to help. And there's two ways to get in touch with them to let Bank of America know that you've been financially affected by the COVID-19. You can either call them at 800-669-6650, or you can go through their online portal. Now here, I know you probably can't see this on your page, but the red button in the top right or the bottom left says request payment deferral. Now what is that? I've been saying forbearance agreement. Payment deferral is saying the exact same thing. What is a payment deferral? I am putting off or I'm deferring making my payments because I've been financially affected by COVID-19. I've lost my job, my hours have been cut. I don't know what's going to happen next week or next month. So when you see payment deferral or forbearance agreement, all it means is that you are putting off your obligation to pay, and your mortgage company is agreeing to do that, and they're not going to take your house while they agree to do that. Now, what we have here on the next page is the website for Chase. And again, just like I did with Wells Fargo, just like I did with Bank of America, I Google searched Chase, COVID-19, and mortgage. And this is the page I found. They also have a phone number. It's 800-848-9136. They also have this online portal where you can fill out the information just to let them know that you've been affected financially and start the process of getting a forbearance agreement in place. I've provided the link here on this next slide, but as I mentioned before, if you just Google search your mortgage servicer, so whoever sends you monthly mortgage statements, whether it's Chase, Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Select Portfolio Services, Ocwen, whatever, whomever is your mortgage servicer, Google search their name, COVID-19, mortgage, you will find their online portal if they have one. So let's talk more about what a forbearance agreement is. I teased it just a few slides ago, but I want to flesh it out a little bit more. Forbearance agreement is a short-term agreement with your lender that changes your mortgage payments and limits your lender's rights to foreclose. Under a forbearance agreement, your mortgage payments may be temporarily lowered or temporarily postponed. That's a whole lot of words to say your lender is agreeing to not require you to make payments for a specified amount of time. And during that time, they're not going to try to collect. They're not going to try to foreclose. They're not going to charge you interest. And everything is written down in an agreement between you and the bank or your lender to make sure everyone's on the same page.
I'm not sure, but maybe it looks like Amir is frozen. Let me call him real quick and confirm. Hold on
Okay.
for just a second.
Sorry about the disruption, folks. We're running into a couple little technical difficulties here, so. What just happened?
He probably left and is coming back in. Please bear with us for just a second. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, and while we're waiting for Amir, I just wanted to let everybody know that this particular workshop for today is only one of the workshops in our month of service. Our month of service also includes will and estate planning, property tax protest, and oh my goodness, what is this? Property tax protest and deferments. Let's see, estate planning, clearing property, clearing title to inherited property. We are also, we had one previous one about evictions if you are a renter during COVID and knowing your rights. We will be having additional workshops or recycling or a repeat of most of these workshops for next month as well. But just so you know, also, all of our meetings are being recorded, so you will have the opportunity, or others will have the opportunity to review this information. We will be sending out notifications to everyone, letting you know when the link would be available. So just go online to the website at nrcdc.org and the Get Registered calendar, and you will see all the upcoming meeting dates from there. But we will, like I said, be sending out a copy of the workshop schedule and sending you reminders of other upcoming workshops that we are going to be having as well. So we do hope that you join us for future workshops and encourage other people to participate as well. Okay, and it looks like Amir said that his computer crashed and he will be back in just a few minutes. So like I said also earlier, we are going to have a HUD certified counselor to join us later on in the call to go over various foreclosure prevention options, housing counseling options that are available for free for folks that are running into quite a few different issues. But in the meantime, if you would like to visit the HUD.gov website, you can also search for available HUD counseling offices to request information. And it looks like Amir is back. You there, Amir? Okay, it doesn't look like it. We will also have a brief introduction from the Harris County Appraisal District and the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office in regards to the protest property tax deadline that is scheduled for tomorrow. So they will be providing all you homeowners with some other information about protesting your property taxes online and what your available options are so that you don't miss that deadline that's scheduled for tomorrow. So it looks like we've got Amir back, but I don't hear him. Amir
Looks like
can't
he's
hear
setting
you.
up. Everyone, don't forget that if you're interested in protesting the appraisal of your homes, you have until May the 15th by 5 o'clock. So everyone should be protesting, or I'm suggesting that everyone should protest the appraisals of their property. And here in Harris County and everywhere, really, it's due on May 15th. There aren't any extensions. I heard that in Fort Bend, there are giving some extensions, but in Harris County, as of right now, there are none.
Okay. Okay, looks like we've got Amir back. You back?
Yes, yeah, I am. I'm sorry about that. No idea what happened. My computer just said it decided to close down. So here we are. Okay, so let me start the process again. Sorry, ignore my dog. Okay.
Well, we were just kind of filling in the dead air space with making a couple of announcements. So, so feel free to go ahead and.
Sure thing. So where we were before, I apologize, I need to skip ahead. We had just gotten done talking about what a forbearance agreement was. And as I mentioned, a forbearance agreement is just a fancy term that means your lender's agreeing to allow you to not make payments for a period of time, and it's not going to collect. Now, I want to emphasize something, that forbearance does not mean forgiveness. I know they sound the same, but if you enter into a forbearance agreement, you're just saying I'm putting off my responsibility to pay because of things that are out of my control. COVID-19 made me lose my job. What you want to make sure you understand with your lender is what's going to happen at the end of the forbearance period. What's going to happen with the amount of payments that I haven't made for, because I haven't been able to work at the end of the 6 months or the second 6 month period, or shorter, or if you need it. And so how is that going to be handled? So it's important to read the fine print. It's important to have someone on your side that has gone through this process before. And we'll talk about how you can find advocates like Lonestar Legal Aid that can help you with these sorts of reading these sorts of agreements. The most important, one of the other big important things to keep in mind with a forbearance agreement is, before you enter into one, make sure you know what your responsibilities are. So you know what's going to happen during the forbearance agreement, you know what's going to happen at the end, how you're going to be making up the payments, but find out if you have to pay, if you have to pay anything during the forbearance agreement. So everyone pays property taxes if you own property. If you have a mortgage on your house, you have to keep insurance on it. Is the lender going to pay that for you during the forbearance agreement, or do you need to pay that? Do you live in an area of town that has an HOA, a homeowners association, or do you own a condo that has a condos owners association? Who's going to be paying those things during the forbearance agreement? You want to make sure that everything that you could possibly be responsible for paying is absolutely clear, to find out who is going to pay what during the forbearance agreement. Now let's talk about what happens when the forbearance period ends. So if you requested the full benefits that you can get under the CARES Act, you've got 180 days not making any payments. You've got another 180 days not making any payments. So after a year, what happens? Well, unfortunately, Congress did not put that information into the CARES Act. It did not require mortgage servicers all to follow one set of rules. However, not all is lost. As we talked about before, there's a bunch of different federal agencies involved: Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, FHA, USDA, VA. And we're going to talk about the options that each of them have. I'm going to talk at a very high level, because if I went into too much detail, it would dominate the entire presentation. There may be time for us to talk in more specifics at the end, but I do encourage, if you have more specific questions, to follow up with either Lonestar Legal Aid or some other advocates that I'm going to highlight at the end of the presentation. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have already come out at the end of March and said that if you request a forbearance with a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac backed loan, you will not be required to make a lump sum payment at the end of the forbearance period. And I want to explain that this is huge that they've come out and said that on the front end. If any of y'all owned homes during Harvey, and maybe some of you had suffered financial effects because you weren't able to work, got behind on your mortgage, or know someone who did, a lot of banks offered forbearances after Hurricane Harvey. They weren't required to. The federal government wasn't making them like they are with the CARES Act. So it's a little different. So every bank was offering something slightly different. Whereas here, federal mortgages, everyone follows the same set of rules. But the problem was the banks weren't clear about what was going to be required once the forbearance period ended. They were kind of making it up as they went. And so a lot of people got 90-day forbearance, 180-day forbearance after Harvey, and then the bank demanded that they pay the full 3 months or 6 months or however many months payment all in once. And you can imagine how that would make anyone feel, having just gone from, I couldn't afford to make these payments, and now you're saying I got to make all the payments. The CARES Act is different because it's built in more specific guidelines, and these agencies are being more proactive. They've learned their lesson, so to speak. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac will offer different types of for post forbearance options depending on your loan. And so, like I mentioned before, I can't go into the specifics, but I can tell you that there are at least 4 different types of options for Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac backed loans. And we can talk about who you can work with to figure out what option works best for you at the end of the presentation. Now, if you have an FHA loan or an FHA insured loan, you currently have 2 options. Your mortgage payments that are not paid during the forbearance period. So let's say you take 180-day forbearance, that's 6 payments. Those 6 payments would be put into a separate loan, so taken out of your loan, and that separate loan is sold to HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. That separate loan does not have monthly payments, does not accrue interest, and does not have to be repaid during the life of your loan, but it will have to be repaid if you do one of 3 things. If you ever get a refinance of your mortgage, part of the money from the refinance will go to pay off HUD. If you ever sell your house, part of the money from selling your house will go to pay off this debt to HUD. Or if you pay off the first mortgage, the underlying mortgage, then the debt owed to HUD will be due, and you may either work out a payment plan with HUD, refinance, or if you got access to the cash, pay them off all at once. The goal here is to make it affordable for you to be able to get through these bad times right now and to give you some breathing room. The second option is a modification. Now, maybe you've heard about modification, maybe you haven't. There's a whole lot of words on this slide now, and I'll say them, but a modification is a new loan. So you'll have a new monthly payment, which will probably be lower. You'll have a new interest rate, which might be lower, and you'll have a new length of time that you have to pay your mortgage, which might be the same, it might be longer, it might be shorter, depending on your finances at the time. A modification under FHA is your loan is going to be modified and your mortgage payment changes. This option is structured so that you can repay what wasn't paid during the forbearance period and still keep your monthly payment affordable. This can, as I mentioned, reduce your interest rate, but may put you on a new term where you may have to be paying for another 30 years. Sometimes this is attractive, sometimes it's not. It really depends on your specific situation. Now, let's talk about the USDA post-forbearance option. So this is after you got your CARES Act benefit, you're able to afford your mortgage, what kind of options are available? As I mentioned before, the USDA has 2 types of mortgages. Guaranteed loans, where you may have gotten a mortgage with Wells Fargo, Bank of America, Chase, but the US government guarantees that it's going to be paid, so they're standing behind the loan. Or you can be part of the direct loan program, where you are directly taking money from the US government to pay to buy your property, and you're repaying the US government. Both of those loans have options for how to handle those. Both of those loans have options for how they should be handled post forbearance. But again, they're very, very fact specific, and it would dominate this presentation if I went into those specifics. What I recommend is you touch base with what's called a HUD approved housing counselor who's experienced in this area, or a real estate attorney who's got practice, who has been practicing helping homeowners. And I'm going to talk to y'all about how to find HUD counselors and real estate lawyers at the end of the presentation. VA loans are very similar to USDA loans. So the loan is made with a private lender, so think Chase, Bank of America, or Wells Fargo, but the Department of Veteran Affairs guarantees that the mortgage will be repaid. These post-forbearance options for VA loans are also fact-specific. And so again, I'm not going to go into what options are available, not to dominate the conversation, but if you have a VA loan, you're thinking about the CARES Act, or you've already taken advantage of the benefits under the CARES Act and you want to know what's next, touch base with a HUD approved housing counselor, or touch base with an experienced real estate attorney who's been practicing regularly helping homeowners. I will tell you that VA loans, lenders with VA loans, are prohibited from demanding a lump sum payment at the end of the forbearance period. So this is another big benefit, just like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac are offering. So if you take a forbearance and it's 6 months, 8 months, or 12 months, you're not going to be looking at being on the hook to pay all of that money at once at the end of the period. There will be options for you to keep your mortgage affordable and repay what you put off. And just to recap, for post forbearance for any type of loan, whether it's federally backed or not federally backed, if you have any questions, don't stick your head in the sand. Don't turn to Google. What I highly recommend you do is touch base with an experienced HUD counselor, HUD approved housing counselor, or an experienced real estate attorney. Most people in this sphere have experience from helping people who suffered financial crises after the 2008 to basically 2012 recession. And so a lot of those people will be able to guide you through what options you have on the table, regardless of what type of loan you have. Now I haven't forgotten about those of you with a non-federally backed mortgage. We're going to talk about what options those people have now. So unlike the CARES Act, which forces a one-size-fits-all solution on all federally backed mortgages, and remember I said that federally backed mortgages represent about 2/3 of all mortgages in the United States. Unlike that, if you don't have a federally backed mortgage, there is no one-size-fits-all solution. Your lender might, but doesn't have to, offer you some kind of forbearance agreement to avoid foreclosures. Mortgage companies are not in the business of owning property. They're in the business of getting paid, having loans that regularly get paid. And so if you suffer financial crises because of COVID-19 and you don't have a federally backed mortgage, call your mortgage company and see what options are available. You can also check their website. A lot of these servicers are putting their information online because wait times are so long. Now, just like with federally backed mortgages, private mortgage or non-federally backed mortgages, you might be working with a loan servicer that does not own your loan. Your loan might be owned by some, random company that you've never heard of, but you might be making your payments to Bank of America. Ask your loan servicer to tell you who owns your loan, or you can send your loan servicer a request for information, the same letter we talked about earlier. And in the request for information, you can ask who owns my loan and what options are available to see if they have forbearance options or anything else. Now, after a forbearance, again, because there's not a one-size-fits-all, you will want to talk to your mortgage servicer to find out what post-forbearance options are available. Generally, you'll hear a lot of mortgage companies refer to this as loss mitigation. What does that mean? They don't want you to lose your house. That's the loss. And they're trying to help you stop that. They're trying to help you mitigate the loss. So you can ask for this information over the phone. You can look to see what available on your mortgage servicer's website for loss mitigation. But I highly recommend sending one RFI, one request for information, in which you ask 2 questions. Who owns my loan? And what benefits do they offer for forbearance or loss mitigation due to COVID-19? And by law, the benefit of a RFI is by law, your mortgage servicer, whether it's a private lender or a federally backed lender, has to respond within a certain amount of time. So the RFI is really a powerful tool for you to get the ultimate answer that you want, get it in writing, and get it explained to you in a clear language. Now I have a short video here that's going to recap a lot of what we talked about in just 2 minutes.
Amir?
Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, I think your PowerPoint is frozen. It's
Okay.
still on what is a forbearance agreement?
Oh, goodness.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, let me try this. Okay, are y'all able to see my slides now?
Yes.
Okay.
Can you put it on slideshow?
Yeah.
All right.
Give me just a second. Okay, my apologies. The
Oh, no.
technical
We're good.
difficulties got us there.
We're good. Thank you so much.
Sure thing. Let me just go back and make sure we're on the same page with the forbearance agreements. So as I mentioned before, you know, forbearance agreements just a fancy term for you to be able to put off making your mortgage payments, and your lender's not going to foreclose on you. So you want to, I'm trying not to bore y'all with repeating the exact same words, but forbearance is not forgiveness. And you want to make sure that you read the fine print on any agreement that that your lender offers you. Now, by law, if you have a federally backed mortgage, they have to offer you up to 180 days. But a lot of mortgage companies have been starting out with 90 days or 3 months, and it's up to homeowners to ask for more if you think you need it. You also want to understand what your responsibilities are during the term of the forbearance period. So that's going to, those responsibilities are going to be, what do I have to pay during the period, if anything, and what's going to happen after the forbearance period. So you want your lender to explain to you and have it in the agreement who's going to pay the property taxes, who's going to pay the homeowner's insurance. If I have to pay a homeowners association or a condos owner association, who's paying that during the term of the forbearance period? And the ultimate question is, what happens when the forbearance period ends? And as I mentioned before, the CARES Act is silent here. There's not a lot of guidance. There's no guidance from Congress here yet. Maybe there will be, but as of this point, there is none. That being said, there's a lot of tools available for people with federally backed and non-federally backed mortgages. So Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac I've already said that if you get a forbearance and you have a Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac backed mortgage, say it's 6, 7, 8 months of forbearance, they're not going to require you to pay all of those payments all in one lump sum. This is huge because this was a problem after Harvey. You already heard my example, so I'm not going to repeat it, but not being able to make payments and then being demanded to pay all of what you couldn't pay at once just doesn't make sense. And the federal government gets that, and these federally backed mortgage companies are making arrangements to help people. Now, Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have at least 4 options to help people depending on their situation. Some of your payments may be put at the end of your loan, and so it just gets a little longer. You put off your payments for 6 months. Your mortgage takes another 6 months to pay off. Some people may wish to pay off what they owe as they go and keep the regular term or period of payments the same. There are other options. They're very fact specific. I'm not going to get into those during this presentation, but we can follow up with either Lonestar Legal Aid or a HUD approved housing counselor after the fact to talk about what options are best for you. After a forbearance and you have an FHA loan, there are 2 options available. So one is where you take the forborne payments, so these are the number of payments you didn't pay, and they're rolled into a second loan that's given to HUD that you'll ultimately have to repay. The benefit is that mortgage doesn't have that mortgage to HUD doesn't have a monthly payment, so you can still afford your regular payment. It doesn't accrue interest, but if you refinance your house, if you sell your house, or if you pay off the first mortgage, you will then have to pay HUD. The second option is to modify your FHA loan, and the modification would take what payments you put in forbearance so that you didn't pay, combine them with what's still owed on your loan, and basically give you a new loan. Maybe your interest rate gets lowered, maybe the term or length of time you have to make your payments gets extended or shortened depending on your finances, and your mortgage payment will definitely change based upon interest rate and term. It ends up looking like a new loan. Now, the USDA has two types of loans: guaranteed loans, where you have a private lender but the government stands behind it, and direct loans, where the United States gives you the money to buy your house. Both of these have post-forbearance options, but I did not go into them because they're very, very specific. Follow up with a HUD experienced housing counselor if you have a USDA loan and you have questions, or follow up with a real estate attorney who's worked with homeowners. I emphasize attorneys that have worked with homeowners, not to say anything bad about my colleagues, but you wouldn't hire a plumber that's only worked in high rises and skyscrapers to work on your house. Just like you wouldn't hire an attorney who's never helped a homeowner, who's only worked and helped big businesses, maybe who's never worked in Texas, to come help you. And so that's why it's important that while all lawyers are good, or most lawyers are good, in my opinion, not all of them know the same information. VA loans are similar to USDA loans in that they're made by private lenders but backed by the US government. There are very fact-specific post-forbearance options for VA loans, which again, I suggest you follow up with a HUD counselor or an experienced real estate attorney to find out what those options are if you have a VA loan. Now, lenders who are servicing VA loans are prohibited from demanding a lump sum payment. So just like Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, if you put off your payments for 3, 6, 7, 8 months, you're not going to have to pay that in one lump sum. There will be an option to get you on an affordable payment plan. But to recap, if you have questions about forbearance, post-forbearance, what your options are under the CARES Act or outside of the CARES Act, I recommend you follow up with an experienced HUD counselor or an experienced real estate attorney who helps homeowners. And I'm going to tell you at the end of the presentation how to find those people. So let's talk about people with mortgages that are not federally backed. There's no one-size-fits-all solution. The federal government has pushed one solution on federally backed mortgages, which make up 66% of the market. But for the other third, or 33%, different lenders are going to have different options. It's up to you to ask. Don't tell yourself no. If you need the help, reach out to your mortgage servicer. Let them know that you've been financially affected by COVID-19 and you want to know what options are available. Now, your loan might be owned by a company that's different than who you pay. So you might be making your mortgage payments to Bank of America because that's who sends you statements. But, Deutsche Bank Trust 2001 might be the actual owner of your owner of your mortgage. It's completely legal. Mortgages are, bundled and traded on the stock market. But your mortgage servicer is the point person for you to figure out what options are available. There are 2 ways to really get that 3 ways to get that information. You can go online, see what the mortgage servicer's website says is available for you. You can call your mortgage servicer, but again, remember that wait times may be long. I prefer for my clients to send a request for information letter. We discussed what an RFI, or request for information letter, is above, but in sending these types of letters, what I do is I try to knock out all the questions I might have at once. So I'll ask who owns the mortgage, and I will ask what forbearance or loss mitigation options are available. So loss mitigation is just a fancy term for figuring out how to prevent you, the homeowner, from losing your home. Let's mitigate that loss. Let's prevent you from losing your house, because mortgage companies are in the business of getting paid, not in the business of foreclosing and holding on to property, because they eventually sell that property. They might not sell it for as much as they wanted to. Loss mitigation options can include modification. They can include another forbearance. It really, if you have a non-federally backed mortgage, depends on who owns your mortgage. And that's why I think the RFI is a powerful tool. And remember, I provided a template RFI earlier in the slides. And if you didn't catch it then, it's available on Lonestar Legal Aid's website on our May the 7th post. Now, what I have here, which hopefully will work, is a 2-minute recap video that talks about everything we've already discussed in our presentation here today. Oopsie. I'm just going to pull it up on YouTube. So it doesn't appear to be working in the slides. And for those of you listening, if you're interested in watching this video, you can go to YouTube and type in National Consumer Law Center. You will find the National Consumer Law Center's channel, and they have a number of videos on legal issues that affect homeowners, consumers on a variety of legal issues. But just 2 weeks ago, they posted this video about the CARES Act.
Amir,
Yeah,
we can't hear it.
Y'all can't hear it?
No, sir.
no.
Okay, apologies. Alrighty. Let's see if I can get it to work in the slides. Let's start this slideshow.
If you can't get it to work on the slides, then everybody knows how to go to it.
Yeah, it worked yesterday. I apologize. None of these things that have happened today happened
That's
yesterday.
okay. We're all understanding. That's
yeah.
perfect.
So just
No
let
problem.
me repeat how you can find this video. It's
Yeah.
2 minutes. It recaps what it's taken me about 45 minutes to an hour to say, which is the CARES Act has a lot of benefits there, and how to access them. You can go to YouTube, type in National Consumer Law Center. You'll find their YouTube channel, and this video is titled, where is it? COVID-19. Yeah, get the latest about coronavirus crisis, what consumers need to know about mortgage relief. Let's restart the slideshow. And let me give you my final tips. So if you are fortunate to be able to still be able to afford your mortgage, go ahead and keep paying it. If you can afford your mortgage payment and your necessary living expenses, keep paying it so that you don't have to access these benefits. However, I want you to know that the CARES Act became effective March 27th, and the benefits that we've talked about will run through the end of 2020, or if the United States lifts its current disaster declaration about coronavirus, meaning we've beaten the coronavirus. Who knows when that's going to be, but it's whatever sooner. If we beat the coronavirus or the end of 2020, that's the end of being able to access these benefits. So if you're in a situation where you can afford your payments now, but in 1, 2, 3 months you can't, understand that you can request up to 360 days to forbear having to make your payments. Now let's say you're in a forbearance agreement. You enter into one for 180 days, but you're able to pay a little bit. Maybe your monthly payment's $800, you can pay $200. Well, partial payments will be taken by your mortgage servicer and put into what's called a suspense account. But once you've made enough partial payments to reach a full payment, your mortgage servicer is obligated by the contract that y'all have signed and by federal law to apply that full payment to your loan. And so if you can afford to pay something and still pay your monthly mortgage living expenses, go ahead and do that. It'll make the end of the forbearance period a little easier to manage. So here I talked about where, if you can access these benefits between now and the end of the year, or now and when the United States beats COVID-19, whichever comes first, you don't have to enter into a forbearance today, tomorrow, next week, unless you need it. Make sure you understand the terms of the forbearance agreement before you sign anything or agree to anything. You want to know what's going to happen at the end of the forbearance agreement, like what is going to happen with all the payments you didn't pay, and who is going to be paying the property taxes, insurance, and your HOA if you have one. If you don't have a federally backed mortgage, but you can't afford to make your payments, you should still contact your loan servicer right away. Ask them what options are available for me. I'm financially affected by the coronavirus, and I'm no longer able to afford my payment. We've talked about ways to get answer in writing, talked about ways to find that information online, but you can also call them. Here are the other resources I kept teasing during the presentation. Lonestar Legal Aid, we are available for free, again, to help people qualify. You can apply either by phone or online. Our website's here. It's www.lonestarlegal.org. Even if you don't apply, we have a lot of really good legal information on the website. As I kept mentioning, on May the 7th, last Thursday, we had a blog post that basically sums up this entire presentation in 2.5 pages. So if you forgot everything that I said, that's fine. Go to lonestarlegalaid.org, look for the May 7th blog post, and you will be able to read it in a condensed form. I've also linked the National Consumer Law Center. So in addition to the YouTube video that I tried to show y'all, there you can go to their website, which is N as in Nancy, C as in Charlie, L as in Larry, C as in Charlie.org, nclc.org. They have a lot of great information. A lot of it's available for free if it's related to COVID-19. I've linked a specific article they had here for mortgage relief, but you can find that video there. You can find other articles that you might find useful there as well. And finally, I've provided the link on how to find a HUD-approved housing counselor. So the Department of Housing and Urban Development, HUD, you can either contact them by phone at 1-800-569-4287 and find out where a HUD-approved housing counselor is in your area, or you can go to HUD's website. Now, I've provided the link here, but if you Google search HUD-approved housing counselor, you'll find the same link. This link isn't the clearest. The great thing about their website is you can filter it by the state of Texas. You can filter it by where you live, your zip code, your city, your county, and find housing counselors that live and work in your area who may be able to better understand your situation. And I'll leave this information up here for just a few more seconds to make sure that anyone who might have been writing things down has the ability to get the full name and link available. I'm just going to leave it for about 10 more seconds. Okay, everybody. The more you know, the more powerful you'll be, the less scared we'll all be as we try to go navigate these uncharted times. And with that being said, I'll open the floor to questions.
Okay, we have a couple of questions in the group chat that I'm going to go back and read that I know that folks have asked already. And I believe some of these you may have covered already, but I'm going to read them again anyway. Does agreeing to a forbearance extend the length of your mortgage term?
It depends. and I know people hate lawyers for saying it depends, but it really does. So I know Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have said one option if you do a forbearance is if you can't afford to repay everything, if you don't want to do a repayment plan, we can just extend the length of your mortgage. So if you do a 6-month forbearance, we'll just extend your mortgage another 6 months. That's not available right now for FHA. It's not clear if it's an option for the USDA or VA loans, but it's definitely an option for Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. For non-federally backed mortgages, it really depends, again, on what the individual owner of your mortgage is willing to offer.
Okay, I'm going to be reading over these questions, but we also want to encourage people that if you do have questions that you'd like to verbally ask that are not included in the chat box, please feel free to raise your hand and we can unmute your mic and you can ask the questions of Amir directly. But there was a question here also that says, does having a forbearance affect your credit score and will it show up on your credit report later on and affect your ability to obtain a mortgage later on, like the filing of a bankruptcy?
So if you have a federally backed mortgage, the CARES Act requires that lenders still report positive information about your loan, even if it is in forbearance. If you have so it should not affect your credit negatively. If you have a non-federally backed mortgage, it depends. Again, there's no one size fit all for those mortgages that are not federally backed about what credit reporting benefits or protections you might have.
And from the credit reporting or the credit counseling background, it is encouraged that if you are experiencing any kind of financial hardship, that you are entitled to put notes on your credit report. So you can include notes that say that, you know, I was affected by Corona or laid off during this period. That's why this bill was late or that mortgage was late and things like that. So it'll be good to include those types of notes if you can on your credit report. So.
Absolutely.
Just an option. Let's see, another question that we have here. What if you canceled before a forbearance is processed and you just want to refinance your current loan? Can you proceed with the loan?
Absolutely. So just because you have a mortgage, or maybe you enter into a forbearance, or you enter into any agreement with your current lender, if you go and refinance, maybe you've gotten a new lender, maybe you're with Bank of America, you refinance with Chase. There's nothing under the law, nothing under any of the mortgage contracts that prohibits you from getting that refinance, that will stop you from getting that refinance.
Okay, the person that asked that question, I believe, has a follow-up. Hello,
Okay.
Are you there? Hello? I've only got you listed here as Galaxy S7, so I'm not sure what your name is. Okay, let's go ahead and move on. Let's see. Can you get a forbearance now for a few months, i.e. 3 months, pay your mortgage for 2, and then request a second forbearance 6 months later?
Yes. As long as you have a federally backed mortgage, you are entitled to up to 180 days forbearance. So that doesn't mean you have to use the full 180, but you can then request an extension, like a follow-up, 180 days, like the question asked.
Okay, great. Let's see. The next thing that we have here. Okay, no, you answered the question about not having to pay the lump sum at the end of the forbearance. So that part was covered. Let's see. I know I saw another question.
While you look just about the lump sum, remember that's a benefit that only the VA and Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac have said they're guaranteeing right now. So if you have a loan with the USDA, or it's an FHA insured loan, or it's a non-federally backed or insured loan, the lump sum, the requirement to pay in a lump sum is not necessarily off the table. Most lenders, in my opinion, I think are not going to force that. But it's up to you to make sure that's absolutely clear before you enter into a forbearance agreement. That's why I structured the presentation the way it was. You want to make sure you know what type of loan you have, federal or not. You want to make sure you understand if you can get a forbearance, and you want to make sure you understand what happens during and after the forbearance before you agree to any of this, so that you can plan accordingly to make sure that you and your family stay safe.
Okay, Galaxy S7, you're there again. Can you hear us? Okay, they keep raising their hand and I've unmuted the mic, but I apparently they're having some technical issues with getting through or getting the mic to work. So, hello? Hello? Okay.
Right, Mama.
We're waiting for them and other questions. I'd like to ask Ms. Cooksey to give a brief introduction of herself. She's with NID Housing Counseling Agency. Ms. Cooksey, you there?
I'm here. I'm here. Glad to join in. I apologize. It's been an interesting morning. This was the information I did hear when I got in was great information. I would just say encourage everybody to make sure you, if at all possible, you can stay current on your mortgages. Do so. If you need the help, definitely the help is there to get it, but you want to make sure, as the gentleman said, make sure you know what you're agreeing to when you enter into a forbearance.
Can you give a little bit more information about the service, the assistance that HUD housing counselors provide?
HUD housing counselors provide free services, and basically we act as coaches. Sometimes you get information from your lenders that you may not quite understand. Your HUD counseling agencies, which you can locate your HUD counseling agencies that's nearest to you by the HUD.gov website, and that will put in your zip code, and it will typically find the counselor that's nearest to you. Those counselors are available to help you understand maybe some of the paperwork that you are receiving from your lenders, and in some cases, they can also assist you with, they don't make a decision for you, they just assist you with understanding what it is that you're being offered. But the services are all free. And we also offer the Homebuyer Education for purchasing a home for the people that are involved in trying to purchase a home, and if you're in trouble with the present mortgage that you have. Most recently, more of the HUD agencies, we are being involved with rental counseling, because as you know, you have a lot of people who have been furloughed or, you know, experiencing some other difficulties as a result of the COVID-19. Their income has been disrupted, and that could be causing a strain in terms of being able to make their rental payments. And so most recently, they've been sending a lot of literature and trying to make sure all HUD counseling agencies are up to speed in regards to rental counseling. But again, all the counseling is free.
And do you all assist with the loan modifications too, if homeowners are interested in doing loan modifications?
Yes, those services are available through the HUD counseling agencies. Unfortunately, I would say that is available. It's just on a first come, first served basis, and do start in time, because a lot of times people will try to mitigate and do a lot of things on their own, and then when they're down to the day before the house is posted for sale, that's when they call in the HUD counselors. We're not able to help at that point.
Okay. Let's see. Amir, I believe we got Galaxy S7. They said that for some reason that we couldn't hear them. And he says, I was told I had to wait 30 days after the forbearance was processed with the current mortgage company. Let's see. And it said that it was good for 30 days for the, let's see, it was good for 30 days, the loan application.
It's hard to figure out what, I think I know what kind of question they're asking, but I don't want to guess. It's hard to figure out really what the answer is here, because I don't entirely know what the question is. If it was a federally backed mortgage, this process seems like the mortgage servicer might either not know what it's doing, which, believe it or not, there are mortgage servicers who don't. Yeah, I can hear you laughing because you dealt with them too. And that's why it's important to know what your rights are under the CARES Act. So if you have a federally backed mortgage and you're going through similar situation to what Galaxy X7 is saying, the mortgage servicer is doing it wrong. And so you should touch base with a HUD counselor or a real estate attorney to kind of navigate the process for you, or with you. If it's a non-federally backed mortgage, this is something where the person at Galaxy S7 is going to want to touch base with a HUD counselor or a real estate attorney to really go through what options are available with that specific lender. Because remember, there's no one size fits all with non-federally backed mortgages.
Okay, it looks like they just text that I canceled the forbearance prior to processing my loan. Okay,
and that's, forbearance is not something that you enter into it. The lender agrees to it because they're required to under the CARES Act. But if you get into a situation where, hey, things are looking better on the work front, or you haven't lost your job, you're good to go. You're not bound by it. You can continue to make your mortgage payments.
Okay. Are there any other questions that I may have missed? I'm going back through the chat box to see if there's anything else that I missed here. Is there any additional information, Ms. Cooksey, that you'd like to include, or in case, I know there's a lot of it that you had missed that Amir had gone over about HUD counseling, but is there anything else that you'd like to add about the mortgage process and how it's being affected by COVID-19?
Well, I don't think, I don't want to be repetitive of the information. It's both a good and bad time in this industry. If you are still working, the Homebuyer Education that is available online at eHome America can definitely take you through the process of understanding the home buying process to take advantage of very low interest rates, which makes it a very good time to purchase. If you are in a property and having challenges, then you just want to look at what your particular situation is, because as Amir said, it's not one shoe fit all, and just because your neighbor did something doesn't necessarily mean you need to do it. So, and I know right now there's a lot of, well, somebody did this and I'm gonna do this. Stop before you do that and look at what you're doing for your particular situation, because it could be a very serious situation once everything settles down, because the ultimate thing is they do want their mortgage payments. You know, if you've entered into a promissory note to make a payment, that's ultimately what they want. The opportunity as a homeowner, though, affords you different opportunities to, when you experience challenges, it's a good thing. You can take advantage of those, but don't abuse them. Just do it when you really need it.
And if I could,
That would be all I want to say.
and if I could just echo one thing Ms. Cooksey said, which is don't wait. Don't wait, don't wait, don't wait. In Texas, foreclosure sales can happen on the first Tuesday of every month. So
Yeah.
last week was the foreclosure Tuesday for May. Please do not call me on the Monday before foreclosure Tuesday, because I've been doing this for 7.5 years. I know my way around things, but there's very little I can do with 24 hours. And just like she mentioned, HUD counselors are kind of in the same boat. So if you are in a situation or think you might be getting into a situation where you need help, now you know what help exists from this presentation. You can do the follow-up with a HUD counselor. You can do the follow-up with Lonestar Legal Aid. If you contact Legal Aid and we tell you you're not eligible, we're not going to turn you away like that. We're going to tell you how to get other help. We're going to put you in touch with other organizations that might be able to help you. The key is ask for it early, because dealing with these big issues sometimes takes a little bit of time.
Good deal, good deal. Thank you guys very much. I really do appreciate you taking the time to provide this information and to tell everyone about the services that are available. I wanted to take a few minutes to have Ms. Mabel Menifee with the Harris County Appraisal District and Jamie with the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office to kind of update the homeowners here about the property tax protest deadline that is scheduled for tomorrow. Mabel, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, would you like to go ahead and make your announcement?
Hi, yes, thanks. Thanks a lot, Nia. Just wanted to remind everyone listening, if you have received your notice of value from the appraisal district, the annual value notice, tomorrow is going to be, okay, I'll show my face. There we go. Tomorrow is going to be the last day to file a protest, if in fact you received your protest, your valuation notice in March or early April. And I will say that about 94 to 95% of Harris County property owners were noticed in that point, during that period of time. So if you at all want to preserve your right to dispute the appraised value that HCAT has placed on your property, then please go ahead and file your protest before the deadline. You may have trouble getting through. Our offices have been closed since mid-March, and you know, most systems so everyone is either calling in or trying to get information answered ASAP through the email system. And you know, with most systems, when overwhelmed, they don't always function as well as they would with moderate use. So if you're having difficulty getting through, you can always go to our website and download that protest form. Go ahead and fill it out. If you send it in that way, you don't necessarily need your iFile number, which you may not have, which is the way you can do it electronically, but get that sent in and recorded to make sure that we receive it before the deadline, so that you're able to preserve that right to protest property, your property value for 2020.
And your website is hcad.org, correct?
Right, www.hcad.org.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Mabel, for providing that information for those homeowners that are participating today. Is there anything else we'd like to kind of include and to wrap up, Myra?
Yes, one of the things that we want to make sure is that we want to thank each one of y'all for taking time out of your busy schedule for coming out and taking some time to listen to this presentation or webinar. We are also have the next webinar will be on Tuesday, May 19th. It's called Create Your Own Estate Plan in a Time of COVID, because a lot of times you will not be able to contact an attorney for assistance. So one of the things that we want to do is try to assist you on how to create your own estate plan during COVID, the process, and which is a little bit different than when we're not under COVID. Another thing that we would like to do is, before we leave, we'd like everyone, if you would like, to go ahead and unclick your camera, and we'd like to see you, and we'd like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we just want to say hello.
And while everybody's kind of introducing themselves, hey, Rashad, we got to unmute everybody too then, I guess, huh?
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
We're going to go ahead and launch the poll and ask all of you to answer the poll questions that we have.
Say hi.
I'd just like to take a moment also to reiterate the partnership that we have with today's presenter, Lonestar Legal Aid, along with
I
Tax
did not
Office.
I put mascara. I don't have eyelashes.
And the Harris County Tax Assessor's Office and the Earl Carl Institute. So those are our partners along the City of Houston Department of Neighborhoods. We are the partners for the Month of Service program, and we all have the same goal in mind, is to help with property preservation, with building assets and maintaining generational wealth. So that's pretty much the primary focus of what we're providing for you today. So we'd like to thank all of you again for joining. I guess we can go ahead back to unmuting everybody and saying hey to a couple of people. I see Eric. Hey, Eric.
Okay, should I just leave? Yeah.
Hello, everyone. I'm muting everyone so we can just all say hello.
Hello.
On the poll about being here for the food. So unfortunately, this month we're not able to provide lunch, but generally we provide some kind of lunch or some kind of dinner at all of our workshops. So I think it was just kind of funny that poll question had that thing about the food, being here for food. So, you know, there's no food, but you can always sit and eat and drink while we're on camera. So,
Hey, Nia, would you tell them about the idea that you all were coming up about, like a drive-through, see what everyone thought?
Yes, we are trying to figure out how do we still reach those folks in the communities that we serve that do not have the technology capability that everyone else has. So someone was throwing around the idea, like some of the churches have done, is to do a broadcast from like parking lots at either large shopping centers or church community centers and things where we will have a presenter that has a speaker, camera capability or something so that everyone in the community can actually just drive up in their car, hear the presentation, and we'll still be able to receive some of that information. So we're still trying to work out some logistics on that, but as soon as we get that plan, we want to definitely make that presentation an option for people in the community that either can't get out or don't have this type of capability or function to use computers and cell phones and things like that to receive this information. But we definitely want to make sure that we try to get this out to as many people as we can. Like I said, this webinar is being recorded, so it will be rebroadcast again. More technical issues that we're having there. So as soon as we get that together, we will definitely let you guys know that you can go back and hear any one of these presentations again. And share with other people, encourage them to actually receive the information as well. So again, thank you all very much for joining us. And I'd still like to ask you to take a couple of minutes or just to answer those few questions that we've got up. We'd love to have your feedback. Let's see who else we got there. Ms. Hayes. Hey, Ms. Hayes, how are you?
Hey, I'm good. Thank you very much. This is the second discussion I've participated in. I already got a positive result on my protest for the appraisal.
Awesome.
I'm listening.
Thank you very much.
It's on your lips.
Appreciate everything you're doing.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Hey, Ms. Veronica, how are you today? Yeah, how are you today?
Hi, Miss Veronica.
Hi. Thank you, Amir. That was wonderful.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
It was wonderful.
Okay. Is that it?
Thank you, everyone. Make sure you go into NRCDC starting in June. All the presentations will be in their calendar. So instead of having links, you will actually have a calendar that you can go to and be able to see what is scheduled for the whole month. So we are learning, we just learned how to use Zoom and conduct a webinar maybe in about, it took about 2 weeks.
Still going on?
Nia?
I'm
So
sorry?
it took us about
going
2
on?
weeks to learn Zoom.
Okay, how do I?
And so we're still working at it, but we finally found a way to put all the classes in one calendar, and you can go to that calendar and register at that calendar. So thank you, everyone. Miss Veronica, is there something you would like to share?
No, I would just like to thank everyone for listening, and I love the opportunity to partner with Lonestar Legal Aid, with Earl Carl Institute, definitely with the City of Houston and our CDC and everybody involved.
It's a great partnership. Thank you, everyone.
All right, thank you guys.
Bye.
You all have a wonderful day. You stay safe.
See you, everyone. Have a great day and be safe, please.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.